This video is a little different from my usual stuff. In fact, I was working on something else entirely, but I just can't let this topic go because I think it speaks to the state of the gaming arts in general and where narrative games in particular are going. Mild rant incoming. The release of Rocksteady's latest game, which I'll just call Squad for keyword reasons I guess, has been a rocky road, to put it mildly. The gameplay trailer that dropped during Sony's State of Play a while ago was downvoted to oblivion on YouTube, and the game's image, along with Rocksteady's itself, has sharply declined ever since, and the game by and large was panned as a soulless live service project, a looter shooter with uninspired repetitive gameplay. Looking at the game itself though, it's not really worse or different from plenty of other games on the market. Fortnite is a live service game that has raked in literally billions of dollars to date. Destiny 2, despite its issues, is up there with players. Call of Duty Warzone is all over the place, and it's got a battle pass just like a ton of other games that players pay for. Basically, a lot of games these days have monetization up the wazoo and don't manage to piss everyone off. Squad may be uninspiring, but is it so much worse than all those other things? What WB Games, the publisher behind Rocksteady's latest, don't understand is that a studio's identity filters deeply into a game's success. For those who don't know, Rocksteady was one of the few AAA game studios left with a glowing reputation in the gaming community. Their Arkham trilogy was deservedly celebrated, and it had a focus on narrative single-player campaigns with tight storytelling and world building. It put them on the map. They became the just give them this type of studio. As in, fans would say if WB was smart, they'd give Rocksteady a Superman game, or a Wonder Woman game, or heck, any game. Rocksteady could do no wrong. After the release of Arkham Knight, their third Batman game, the studio went quiet for years. Word spread, rumors spread that Rocksteady was working on a game centered around Task Force X. Alright, that wasn't our first choice. Folks had kind of already started to get tired of that team after Warner Brothers tried to make them their version of the Guardians of the Galaxy, but hey, it's Rocksteady. Then we started getting our first looks at the game and everyone's jaws collectively dropped for the wrong reasons. This wasn't single player, this wasn't narrative driven, there wasn't even free flow combat. It was a shooter. It was bouncy. It was littered with shiny purple weak points. This didn't look like Rocksteady. This looked like a checklist full of stuff you'd see in Fortnite, Destiny, and Warzone thrown into a DC Comics blender. Only one out of the 4 cast members is known for using guns, so why do they all suddenly now have them? That'd be like giving Spider-Man a Glock or the Hulk a semi-automatic. The decision came across as lazy and cynical. Backlash became so bad that Rocksteady clearly pivoted their marketing focus. Suddenly, any mention of live service elements, battle passes, looter-shooter stuff, all that, even the combat was swept under the rug. It became then all about traversal and story. It was like a sleight of hand. Don't look over here with all the stuff you hate. Look over here with all the cool cutscenes and flying around stuff. Rocksteady was essentially trying to convince you that they were the same studio you knew and loved. Although what didn't help was the fact that the studio's co-founders had left their own company in the lead up to the game's release. Now, it's hard to say, maybe it was because of their disdain for the project, or maybe it was because of a recent Human Resources report on the state of the company, but point is, it didn't really matter as much because just them leaving tanked the optics. At the end of the day, it felt like Rocksteady knew what the general opinion was, but they were stuck with what they had, and hoped to hide enough of the game to lock in as many pre-orders as they could, even going so far as to not send out any review codes for critics and YouTube creators. And that's a growing problem in the industry. They focus on pre-orders. More and more games are releasing half-baked or broken because the only sales numbers that seem to matter now are the ones from before release day. And so the strategy sometimes is to mislead and hide until the very last moment. It seems Rocksteady lost more goodwill than Bethesda did after Fallout 76. So why are they in this sticky situation? Like I kind of said, if Squad was put out by any other studio, it'd be a little boring and flat, but not offensive. As I mentioned in a previous video gaming doesn't have a ton of figureheads. You know, titans of the art form, like music has the Beatles and Bach, and film has Spielberg and Clooney and so on. Gaming has Kojima and a few others, but by and large the figureheads in gaming are studios. And so studios can fail in very personal ways for the gaming community, which is what a lot of publishers don't seem to get. The situation seems to be that executives run studios like a product, whereas swaths of their customers have very personal relationships with their studios and dev houses. Some folks think that gamers don't know what they want and can be kind of petulant and petty for no reason, and hey, I'm sure that's true sometimes. But by and large, what makes gamers so tough to cater to, especially single-player ones, is that they actually want to be very trusting. They want a dev team to cheer on. Each one has an identity. A Bethesda game was different from a BioWare game, was different from a Rockstar game. But what's happening in the industry now is the antithesis of a unique identity. Everything is becoming homogenized. It looks the same. And the focus is on getting players hooked, addicted on a gameplay loop that appeals to the basest dopamine hits, to get them to throw money at battle passes, cosmetic items, loot boxes, all that stuff. It's a real casino mindset. Sure, I enjoy some Fortnite. I tried Destiny a few years ago and liked it fine, but when you start getting your epic games in my Rocksteady or Activision in my BioWare or whatever in my Bethesda, then we got a problem. It smacks of business school Bob trying to hack the system to make the biggest pile of cash in the shortest time, all without understanding the industry he's in. You can't just get BioWare or Rocksteady to abandon what they're known for and used to doing and make something completely different. That's a cheap use of brand recognition, and all this strategy does is burn out veteran developers, cause them to jump ship, and then turn studios into shells of their former selves. Yeah, I kind of have strong feelings about all this. Rather than nurture a model of sustainable, steady growth, which beloved studios get, publishers increasingly want an army of cash cows, and they want it because, like every other sector in the economy, corporate consolidation is rampant, and these huge corporate beasts need to make their money back fast. But the ironic thing is, they're killing their cash cows in the process because they're making decisions that huge swaths of their customers hate. The top brass at Warner Bros. Discovery, which owns WB Games, is keenly interested in turning as many of their properties as they can into live service games. Looking at the numbers, it makes sense, right? Games keep consumers on board and hooked way longer than movies do, and they have a lot more potential for constant monetization. Like, movies don't charge you to watch the end of the film or charge you to see an actor, and football games don't charge you to see replays. Live service games have massive potential for big profit. The problem is the market is so settled and saturated at this point that it's almost impossible for a new live service game to hit and stick in the way publishers want, and it's not for lack of trying. It's not a big stretch to say that for every fortnight, there are 5 or more failed games that were just like it that cost millions upon millions of dollars to make and support. Live service games can win big, but the risk is tremendous. They're expensive to develop and constantly maintain. A conventional single-player game usually has patches and DLC that come with it, but eventually the developer is free to move on to other things, and let it be that. With always-on games, that's what the studio does now. It's why Naughty Dog walked away from its own live service project based around The Last of Us. They didn't want to become just a support studio for that one game. Anyway, the risk is huge in large part because the bar to clear for success is so high. If you were to buy the game new at full price and play it once, twice, even 3 times, it would be considered a massive failure. Live service games want you to play for years. They want you spending money on it all the time. They want you to get your friends to buy it, make it their main game for years, and drop cash on it every single week. It's like a pyramid scheme where you get more and more players to join with you, but you don't see any of that money. It's a big commitment they want from you as a player, and the thing is, most players are fine with where they are now. That's why you get flashes in the pan sometimes from new games, but only a couple in the AAA live service genre are actually successful. Even Destiny 2, a household name, is flailing desperately to try and be profitable, and it's it's nonsense that companies who are too risk-averse to fund creative, novel ideas are now tripping over themselves to bet it all on red. Most players don't care to shell out $15 for a character skin every day, but they're not the focus. It's the whales, and if the game can just hook enough whales. While Business School Bob over there at Warner Brothers is patting himself on the back for thinking he just beautiful-minded the entire gaming industry, seeing what nobody else saw, EA and Ubisoft, who are some of the most predatory and hated outfits in the gaming sphere, are pivoting back, green-lighting single-player narrative experiences. Not across the board, but they're letting them through. And they didn't do it because they suddenly grew a heart like the Grinch. It's because they saw the likes of the Dead Space remake, the Resident Evil remakes, Hogwarts Legacy, Baldur's Gate 3, and others clean up shop, while stuff like Battlefront 2, Fallout 76, Avengers, and others land in all sorts of hot water. Let's pause for a minute. Avengers failed. Avengers. Even Marvel, at the height of its powers, couldn't pull in enough support to make the Avengers game a success. It was supposed to live on for years, but the servers recently shut down, and you can't even buy the game on digital storefronts anymore. They put it on sale for like $5 and then it's gone. It's the definition of a dead game. Looking at the broad similarities, Squad did not learn anything from their demise, and odds are WB Games still won't. They'll take the totally wrong lessons from Squad's reception. They'll think the problem was what little narrative there was in there, or the cast, or even the players themselves, because Squad is what executives tell you to want, and if you don't want it as a player, then you are the problem, because evidently you owe them your money. But the thing is, you really don't. The actual developers at Rocksteady worked really hard on this, sunk years of their lives into it whether they wanted to or not, and it's a tragedy that the final product is something that is so hard for me as a consumer to support. Alright, rant over, thankfully. Sorry about that, but I just had to get that out there. What are your thoughts on all of this and the gaming landscape in general? Do you feel good about it? Are you just a different kind of player than I am? I want to hear about it. Let me know in the comments. Grab a like on your way out. Subscribe if you forgot to, and give the bell a ring if you had a decent time or want to see more stuff. Hope to see you again. For now, stay tough and stop by again sometime.